I would like to introduce you to Ken Wall, a very godly man and my dad.
Today is May 4th. And as many of you say, may the 4th be with you. I was supposed to have done this video on the weekend, but I was sick because of a bad bout of diverticulitis. But today, thankfully, I'm feeling better. Today, the question I want to ask you is this: how much evidence will it take you to believe that Jesus is God? I want to use the example of Caiaphas, who was the high priest at the time of Jesus. He was the supreme religious and spiritual leader of Israel. You would think that as a spiritual leader of Israel, that Caiaphas would be looking forward to the arrival of the Messiah. But let's look at how Caiaphas reacted to one of the greatest miracles in the Bible, as told in John chapter 11. The chapter begins with telling us that Lazarus was sick. We have no idea what the illness that Lazarus had, but it was serious enough that Lazarus' sisters, Mary and Martha, sent a message to Jesus to come quick, as Lazarus was obviously in bad shape. When Jesus received the news, he said in verse 4, "This sickness will not end in death. No, it is for God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through it." And Jesus is telling his disciples, "Look, guys, Lazarus is already dead, but you got to see what I'm going to do." Now, I like to say it with enthusiasm. Then after this, Jesus purposely stayed in Jerusalem for 2 more days. Then he went to Bethany. When Jesus arrived with all his disciples and all the others who followed him, Jesus was informed that Lazarus has been in the tomb for 4 days. The 4 days is significant in the fact that Jewish superstition of that day believed that a person's soul stayed near the grave for 3 days, hoping to return to the body. Therefore, it was accepted that after 4 days, there was absolutely no hope of a resurrection. And indeed, he was dead, dead, dead. Martha came out to greet Jesus, and in verse 21, she says, "Oh, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." Martha knew in her heart that Jesus has the power to heal, but all indications are that Martha had no idea that Jesus could bring someone back from the dead, especially after someone had been dead for 4 days. Healing someone who had a disease was one thing, but to the Jewish people, death was final. Then in verse 25, Jesus tells Martha, "I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live, even though they die." Every human being has a soul, and we have the choice for our soul to live eternally with Jesus or eternally in a place without Jesus. Okay, and now, I'd like to say, for the big moment, Jesus arrives at the tomb with all his disciples, plus many more who were following him, along with all the friends and relatives of Mary and Martha. It was quite a big gathering. In John 11:39, which I'm quoting in the old King James, Jesus said, "Take ye away the stone." Martha, the sister of him that was dead, saith unto him, "Lord, by this time he stinketh, for he has been dead 4 days." I have always loved that word stinketh. And in case Lazarus, after 4 days, he would have been truly stinketh. When Jesus told them to roll away the stone, I am sure that all these people standing around had no idea as to why he wanted to do this. Most likely, they thought that he just wanted to see Lazarus one more time before the stone was rolled back permanently. Then Jesus shouted, "Lazarus, come out." I'm sure the reason he shouted was to make sure that everyone heard exactly what he said. And I'm also sure that a lot of people immediately thought that this guy is nuts, or, who does he think he is? Then the impossible happened, as we read in verse 44, "And the dead man came out, his hands and feet bound in grave clothes, his face wrapped in a headcloth. Jesus told them, unwrap him and let him go. If you were there, how would you react? I think initially I would be in shock as to what I just saw, because this was impossible. Then immediately I would believe that Jesus is indeed God. So let's get him back to Caiaphas. Here is how he reacted to this wonderful miracle. There were a number of Pharisees who were eyewitnesses to Lazarus being raised from the dead. They went to Caiaphas and the Jewish leader. Verse 53 tells how they responded to this miracle. So from that time on, the Jewish leaders began to plot Jesus' death. They were worried that the Romans were going to come and destroy their temple because of this guy, Jesus. And they didn't pay any attention to this miraculous miracle. Basically, they sure were not impressed. So, how are you going to react to Jesus? I hope that you bow your knee, ask Jesus to forgive you of your sin, and ask Jesus to give you eternal life. May the good Lord be with you until we meet again next week.